So we talked about the four phases of the menstrual cycle: menstruation, proliferative phase, secretory phase, premenstrual phase. This particular slide is just a review slide. We already went over it in detail. Uh, over here. We already went over it in quite good. This is all you need to know, by the way. This is all the details you need to know for it. Now, last week, one of the things we did was answering this question: what day does a woman with a 25-day cycle ovulate? You should be able to answer these kind of questions, okay? We went over how to answer this particular one. The key thing you got to understand is that the follicular phase, that's the amount of time that changes. But the luteal phase never changes. Like that's going to be 13 days long, okay? Um, and remember, the first day after the follicular phase is going to be ovulation. Okay, that's going to be the day of ovulation. All right, after the follicular phase. So however long that follicular phase is, that day right after that is when the mature follicle pops out and ovulates from outside of the ovaries. Okay. Uh, if you need to review that, definitely revisit that lecture. I think I have to upload the YouTube video for that, I think, still. But if you have to review that again, it'll be there for you guys to watch. Okay. So this is just a review slide. Make sure you understand what happens in each of these four phases. Okay. And it's going to be looking at the lower end. Okay. And remember the other thing I did, guys, how I correlated different hormone levels between the menstrual cycle and the ovarian cycle, how luteinizing hormone has a peak over where the ovulation happens, and also how luteinizing hormone at the same time have a peak of estrogen. Okay, all right, that makes sense. All right, so make sure you're able to correlate these different hormonal levels by looking at all these four. Well, there's four pictures here. Right, there's four different ones. You have this one here. You got this one, and this one. Right. So be able to correlate all four of these. All right. It's gonna be important. I can ask really good questions from these. All right. So make sure you understand this particular slide fairly well. Okay. All right. Neurohypophysis and the premenstrual syndrome. So remember, for the last couple of days of your cycle is called the premenstrual syndrome. Where you're going to start preparing for your next period, essentially, if you're a woman. This is going to happen in the posterior portion of the pituitary, which is AKA your neurohypophyses. So this means that there's going to have direct connection between there's connection between your pituitary and hypothalamus via neurons. Okay, that's where the communication happens. Not like the adrenal hypophyses where you're going to have connection between your capillary, like blood vessels. Okay, if you remember. Okay, synthesized in the specialized neurons in the hypothalamus. Okay, long axons travels into the neurohypophyses where hormones are stored in axonal terminals. So that's the thing. If you remember the neuromuscular junction, how you have vesicles there at the bulb that contains, let's say, a lot of acetylcholine. It works in the same principle here, where the hormones are going to be actually stored in these little axon terminals. Okay, now these are going to be released from the neurohypophyses due to two different hormones. Okay, you have antidiuretic hormone. If you remember from the kidney chapter, this has to do with water retention. So you're going to increase water retention. Diuretics, on the other hand, like if you're drinking coffee, coffee is a diuretic, it's going to make you pee more, right? Oxytocin is another one. This causes cramping due to cyclical contractions of myometrium, and we all know oxytocin plays an essential role in childbirth, right? And contraction. Okay, so what exactly does oxytocin does in the breasts? Now, you're gonna be correlating this with prolactin. Okay, now we all know, like, I mean, you could kind of guess from the name prolactin. Pro means it's positive reinforcement. Lactin, it's good for lactose, right? It's gonna be producing milk, right? So it works with prolactin to cause milk ejection. Okay, now Oxytocin has to do with contraction. It's going to be contracting muscles. So the actual act of milk ejection itself is going to be primarily because of oxytocin causing contraction of the smooth muscles around the mammary glands, okay, the alveoli. This is going to push milk through the lactiferous sinus, okay, and this is a positive feedback loop regulation, all right? And this is going to be common, and this is a common theme with oxytocin. Oxytocin acts mostly in a positive feedback loop manner, okay? So make sure you understand that, all right? And it's not only about the breast. The big example is, of course, during childbirth, right? You secrete oxytocin when you're giving birth to a child. That oxytocin that you're releasing goes back to the hypothalamus and tells the hypothalamus, let's start doing this. And also your pituitary gland, right? It tells everything, start secreting more oxytocin. Give me more oxytocin because we need to make sure this baby comes out, right? So that's how it works. Okay, so functions of oxytocin in the uterus to stimulate contraction of the uterine muscles, right? It's going to cause cramping. Now, during childbirth is part of a positive feedback loop initiated by the uterine stretch. So there's going to be, if you remember, you have cells lining your various organs and tissues that have things like baroreceptors, stretch receptors, right? Now, these are all dependent on whether or not the muscle, like the organs, they stretch out far enough, like they stretch out your muscles far enough to give the signal, right? So that means that it senses the stretch caused by childbirth, right? The baby's there, it's the baby's fully grown, right? And the baby's trying to push out, right? It's going to cause the contraction to start occurring. Okay, the is ready to come out, right? And that's how it starts this whole process. Okay. And also oxytocin is fermentis, which is to expel menstruation fluid and tissue. Okay. And it's also functioning in sexual intercourse, okay, where the sperm is going to be pushed up towards the fallopian tubes with the help of the contractions caused by oxytocin, okay? It stimulates the cervix to push the sperm upwards, okay? Now, remember this, okay? This is a fact. However, it's not the sole purpose of the cervix to do this, okay? The sperm has a job too. Guys, what does the sperm have that allows for movement? Flagella, right? Yeah. It's a two-way street, right? They're gonna be working together. You're gonna have the women, you're gonna have contractions in the cervix that's gonna help push up your sperm, but then also the sperm have flagella that's gonna be able to move it to propel each cell towards an ovulating egg. Okay, secondary oocyte. Now, so let's more prolactin. Okay, and what does that have to do during female puberty? Okay, and then of course, with milk, right? So prolactin is going to be one of the primary hormones involved in breast development and also milk synthesis. Milk, we already covered this in the previous slide. But so what is prolactin controlled by? Well, just like every other hormone, the secretion of a hormone from uh, the okay, usually going to be regulated by a class of hormones called releasing hormone. Now remember, releasing hormone. This is going to be from the hypothalamus. If you're like every other hormone we've covered, okay. Now, I have to clarify, guys. Okay, clarify this. Prolactin itself, the hypothalamus itself, does not control synthesis of hormones. It controls secretion of hormones. The pituitary is going to store all the hormones it makes, but it's not able to secrete it until releasing hormone it gets exposed to the specific releasing hormone. Okay. Okay. Now, in this case, for the most part, that's how it works for the most part. But in this case, with the lactotrophs, okay, with lactotrophs, all right, you're gonna be synthesizing and secreting the protein prolactin. Now, for prolactin, some hormones work differently. Most work other ways. Okay, this could be it's a little bit. You have to take into account some exceptions. For example, if I say something like, if I ever say in a test, always or never, there's only a very few examples where that actually apply, but usually those are red flags if you ever see always or never, because there's always an exception. Uh, but usually it's to be so usually the pituitary is going to have a storage of hormones, okay? A certain amount of hormones. But prolactin, okay? Prolactin actually itself is also going to be synthesized and secreted, okay, due to the activation of these type of cells, lactotrophs, okay? So lactotrophs has to be activated first, all right? It has to be activated by a releasing hormone, and then it synthesizes and secrete the protein hormone prolactin. Now, other hormones, like for example, uh, growth hormone, okay, that one you're gonna have some growth hormone already made. Okay, it's not only because it's not 100% reliant on the releasing hormone. You're gonna have some stored away, but then the releasing hormone comes in, it's gonna allow your glands to actually secrete it. Okay, I'm sorry, glands, the pituitary gland, the adenohypophyses to secrete it. Uh, Now, this is also known as lactogenic hormone. Okay, and of course, prolactin, like I said before, is going to have involvement in producing milk, okay, as well as developing your breast when you're going through puberty, all right, and especially after pregnancy. Now, not much to talk about here. Is everyone clear on this particular slide? I want to go more into detail. I'll mention one thing, actually. Um, we do, uh, and some of you, if you're a mother already, you'll probably know this already. For those, uh, why does a baby when they're suckling on the woman's breast, why does that cause a woman to lactate? Why do you think that's the reason? This is talking about. Anyone have any idea why the suckling of a baby causes the woman to produce more milk and then to actually um, ejaculate milk? Yeah, well, oxytocin is going to be involved. Yes, because the suckling caused by the baby is going to activate, there's receptors, right? And it's going to activate hormones to be produced and secreted, and that's going to cause contraction so that the baby is able to, I mean, and also the suckling, the actual uh, the mechanical input the baby does also helps to do that. But then you also have smooth muscles being contracted due to oxytocin production, right? Yeah, it is a positive loop. Yeah. Sense, everyone? Yeah, yeah, that's true. There is usually a letdown feeling before feeding the baby. I won't talk experience because you know I don't. That's not my job. But yeah, I'm not gonna ask a question about that. Just a little bit discussion. A little discussion about it. Uh, okay. Okay. So this is kind of like a review slide, right? Female hormones. What hormones are responsible for puberty? So guys, what's responsible for puberty in a female? Which hormones? FSH, all right, luteinizing hormone, and what's this hormone? That's really, I mean, there's two more. Is that two more hormones? But what's the third and really important hormone? Oh, puberty. Okay, fair enough, Cheryl. That's fair enough. Yeah. That's technically true. I was asking about gonadotropin releasing hormone. Yeah, well, yeah. So LH is luteinizing hormone. So I mentioned that already. Uh, is it estrogen or testosterone? And it's a consequence of luteinizing hormone. Yeah, right. And then there's one more. There's also progesterone that does it, and I could show you where it happens. See, and this is gonna be during when you have your periods during, and it's not only restricted to puberty, but it's gonna be for the rest of your life, right? Until you reach menopause. It's different, but progesterone is another important one. Okay, but the three main ones are LA, FSH, and estrogen. Okay. All right. We covered this already. Okay. Now, ovulation it's going to take usually takes place 14 days before menstruation. Okay, so that means 13 days after the follicular phase. That's when ovulation happens, right? Now, now, how would you estimate ovulation for someone with a shorter or longer cycle? So this means, okay, means here about where does the ovulation happen, right? And we already spoke about that in that one slide, okay? And I'm not gonna go crazy on that, but I will ask a few questions, talking like giving like an example like this over here, this this highlighted blue sentence here, right? This is the kind of question I want you guys to think about, all right? In addition to the rest of the material, all right? All right. Is everyone clear? All right, sweet. Now, for the next slide, I didn't upload the next slide yet because I still want to add more slides to it. I feel it's like a little, it needs a little bit more material. I have it prepared, but I want to modify it a little bit more before I distribute it to you guys. So this is it for the female reproductive system. Now, I want to give now what I'm going to show you now. The next PowerPoint is the last PowerPoint in the semester, and it's going to be on, like I promised, it'll be on the immune systems. All right. Now, this is short lecture slides, shorter uh, than the other ones. It's gonna be like probably. I have to add a few more things to it, but just to tweak it a little bit for you guys. But it's gonna be pretty short because there is no way in hell you're gonna be able to cover the immune system on its own in a single week. This is a whole it'll take easily a whole semester. Honestly, you can take a whole year to learn about the immune system, right? That it's that intense. Now, the lymphatic system, by the way, goes hand in hand with the immune system, and usually it's going to be so intertwined with one another that they're basically the same thing almost. Not really, but they're almost the same thing. So when you talk about the lymphatic system, usually we're talking about the immune system and vice versa. Okay, they work in tandem. They're like twins almost. So anyway, so start with the introduction about the lymphatic system. And oh, before I keep going, does everyone see this slideshow? I always have to make sure everyone sees the slideshow before I go through it. Okay, just checking. You never know, things could happen. So, and this, I decided to make this slide going to be a little more descriptive. There'll be a lot of pictures, but it's going to be more descriptive. Just because I think for you guys it'll be a lot easier to study. The problem with the other slideshows that I've noticed is that especially for remote lectures, those slideshows were all made with having face-to-face interactions in mind. It's a different experience. So I made this a little bit more descriptive. I went more into the textbook kind of and just kind of took things from there more. This I think is more really important. Uh, but anyways, so like I said before, okay, lymphatic system is closely associated with your immune system, and like I said, to the degree that you can't really distinguish it, right? Now, what's the true purpose of the lymphatic system? Well, it's a drainage system, okay? The lymphatic system, its primary function is to drain fluids that escape your circulatory system. So your circulatory, your blood vessels, for example, your capillaries, for example, they're kind of leaky, slightly leaky. So what you're gonna have constantly is that some fluids are gonna escape into your tissues, right? Now, this could build up like this. These liquids could build up in your tissues. However, this doesn't happen normally because we have our lymphatic system. So basically, what happened is all the fluids in the interstitial fluid that becomes your tissues, they leave through they leave via the lymphatic nodes. So they go into your lymphatic system and it'll travel back into basically your heart. So the end of the road for all the drainage is to resend all that fluid back into where your heart is. Okay, that's the primary objective of the lymphatic system. All right, so okay, so here, blood pressure causes leakage of fluid from capillaries, like I said, because remember, capillaries are pretty leaky. They're very thin, right? So this happens. I should also add, it's not only the blood pressure, it's also because of the capillaries of descended that they're pretty thin. It's only one cell wall thick. The epithelial layer for it, it's pretty thin. So the chances of leakage is increased because of that in conjunction with blood pressure, right? So okay, so anyways, so once the fluids enters your lymphatic system, it's gonna be known as lymph. So lymph is the actual fluid, okay, once it's become part of the lymphatic system, okay? Now, lymphedema, lymphedema is a pathology of the lymphatic system. So guys, if you could break down this word lymphedema, what does this mean to you? What kind of pathology are we expecting with a person with lymphedema? Yeah, Caroline, that's correct. So you can have accumulation of interstitial fluid in whatever tissue it is. Correct. So, but now lymphedema in particular, the cause of this buildup is usually because of blockage in the draining caused by cancerous cells. So cancerous cells could block the drains. Okay, that's gonna where the different ducts that all of the fluids from the interstitial area, all that the tissue fluids will go into. So cancerous cells could block that and it'll cause an accumulation, right? And that's lymphedema. Okay, so lymphedema, guys, remember, going to be part of it's going to be due to usually cancerous cell blockage. Okay, usually. All right. Now, you could also have certain bacteria. Certain bacteria could actually block your lymphatics, and that's pretty dangerous too. Uh, Guys, do you remember elephantitis? That disorder? We talked about elephantitis back all the way back when we were talking about edema, just edema on its own, that word. So that's a disorder caused by a non fully functional lymphatic system. That's your drainage, right? If you can't drain the fluids from from your tissues, it is going to build up. That's why you get that inflamed, swollen, like hyper swollen legs, extremities, right? Your various extremities will be super swollen and inflamed. That's the issue. Okay, issues with the system being compromised. Now, just look at the lymphatic system quickly. So, lymphatic system is it's systemic, meaning it's all over your body. Okay, it spreads all the way from your jugulars all the way down to all four of your extremities. Okay, so it goes all the way down to your feet. All right, and this is important because you want to be able to have drainage of interstitial fluids from around the body, right? And then deliver whatever all that lymph all that into the circulatory system. That's the whole point of it, right? And there's actually other functions of the lymphatic system when it has to do with the immune system, and we'll get into that in a bit. But one of the big functions of the lymphatic system. Yeah, I will zoom actually. I will zoom. So if you see all these green lines spread in our cartoon here, these green lines are your lymphatic vessels, lymph vessels. All right, and they spread all over your body, systemic. Okay, and there's a lot of things here that are labeled, and we're not going to go into it, such as your thymus gland. So, guys, do you remember when you dissected the main class semester? I hope it's last semester. Uh, and you notice it's kind of like fatty gland over the top of the heart. Do you remember that? And you remove so that you could actually cut through the heart and remove it, so you could see the brachiocephalic trunk and all that good stuff behind it. Oh, this is the thymus. It was the thymus gland. I don't know if they taught you this. It wasn't required because you weren't going to go into the too much lymphatic system because it's you just it's I mean they probably told you your name, but the thymus is going to play a key role in your adaptive immune system, and we'll get into that soon. Okay, so then so all this green here, this is going to be all these lymphatic vessels. Okay, now where the capillaries are, where the leakage happens. So over here, so so the red over here is your capillaries, is zoomed in. Okay, this is your capillaries. Okay, then the green here are your lymphatic capillaries. Yes, guys, your lymphatic system does have lymphatic capillaries. The lymphatic capillaries is where the actual fluids get absorbed into, okay? All the interstitial fluids, they get absorbed into the lymphatic capillaries, okay? Make sure you understand that, okay? So what happened is your blood vessel, your capillaries are going to leak out some interstitial fluid, and it's going to build up this interstitial fluid, which I'm circling right now. And that interstitial fluid then is going to be transferred into your lymphatic capillary. Okay. Once it gets absorbed into lymphatic capillaries, it goes into the lymphatic vessel and then gets transported through your body up to different ducts. There's going to be different ducts at the end of the road where it's going to empty out all that fluid that it receives from the tissues, depending where in the body, and I'll cover that, okay, in a moment. And of course, I, I this is going to be important. Zoom in here. Understand that you're gonna have, and this makes sense, by the way, and you'll know soon why. Well, I could just mention it right now, honestly. You're gonna have masses of lymphocytes and macrophages, meaning you're gonna have immune cells located in something called the lymph node. Okay, and that lymph node are where the interstitial fluid happen. Lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are responsible for that. But the lymph nodes, you also have macrophages, lymphocytes, and there is a reason for that, right? Guys, what is the highway of the human body? What's the highway? Remember that analogy I gave you? What was the highway of the human body? If you're that analogy, your blood vessels, right? Your circulatory system was like a highway for oxygen, deliver oxygen. Yeah. Now, your lymphatic system is also a highway for your immune cells. Okay, so let's say you have a open wound infection, like in your arm. That means there's going to be macrophages and lymphocytes being stored in different lymph nodes, and they'll be actually secreted, like they're gonna move outward and enter the blood vessels, the blood vessels, the lymphatic vessels, and get quickly transported towards the area of infection. Okay, so the lymphatic system, in a sense, is a highway for immunological cells. Okay, and then eventually those immunological cells will find its way into the bloodstream. Okay, that's why if you find globulins, antibodies in your bloodstream, that means you had an infection, right? That's how you test for infections. Usually, you're trying to detect the presence of antibodies, different immunological cells, like an increased level of immunological cells in that area, and that's how you check to see if there's an infection. Um, everyone clear on that? Now, of course, there's a few more organs, a few more portions of the lymphatic system that are part of it. So I say you have your thymus, right? You have your lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are going to be responsible for actually taking in the interstitial fluid. You have your thymus. You have your spleen. Your spleen is going to be a secondary lymphatic organ, secondary lymphatic organ. And last but not least, you have your bone marrow, and your bone marrow is actually a primary lymphatic organ. Bone marrow. Now, the bone marrow is going to be the area where you're going to have all the stem cells, and all these stem cells are going to be important for making more red blood cells, white blood cells, and we'll talk about more of that shortly. Okay. All right. Lymph enters, I said before, lymph enters the lymph via lymphatic capillaries and travels in the following manner. So this is going to be the the destinations it takes in the correct order. You need to know this. It enters, so first it enters your lymphatic capillaries at the lymphatic nodes, okay? And then it's going to enter the lymphatic vessels, and then eventually it's going to travel the lymphatic vessels towards a lymphatic duct. And the lymphatic duct then is going to dump out all that lymph into the circulatory system, okay? This here, and like I said before, this here happens at various locations. You have various ducts around your body, and it just depends which part of the body this lymph is coming from. Okay, is it coming from your abdominal area? Is it coming from the right side of your body, the left side of your body? It depends on that. Okay, and I have another picture that shows that. All right. Much like normal capillaries in our circulatory system, the lymphatic capillaries are also thin. Why is this important? Guys, why do you think it's important to have thin lymphatic capillaries? Yeah, it's it's to ease the burden. Yeah, so it's to make it easier for the interstitial fluid to actually come in, right? It makes it easier. Yeah, when you're able to freely diffuse, it makes life so much easier, right? Yeah, got that, Carolina. It's to move the lymph back into the circulatory system via diffusion. That's a partial explanation. And I think it's good enough for this class. Uh, but it's very similar to the circulatory system where having a very thin wall allows for freer exchange of fluids, right? And in the case of capillaries, also gases, right? Uh, they exist in almost every tissue in the body. So your lymphatic system exists almost in every tissue in the body. There's a big exception I want you guys to know. Can you guys guess the one exception, one of the exceptions where you don't see lymphatic vessels? Take a guess. What? Yeah. Where you won't see this. Not necessarily. Yeah, I could pick this picture. Where's the one? What's the one that you don't see it? Look at all the green lines. Yeah, yeah. The specifically your central nervous system. And you can see that, right? Look, if you actually look at this picture, if you actually put a line through her like this, you will see there like it goes down the spinal cord, right? You see, and that's you don't see any of your lymphatic interfering with your central nervous system. Yeah, the central nervous system will be an exception. I want you guys to know that exception, okay? I can ask a true and false question on that, okay? Now, semilunar valves play an important role in this in the lymphatic system. So you do have valve in your entire lymphatic vessel. Like when you look through your lymphatic vessels, you do have semilunar valves. Why do you think you have valves in general in your lymphatic system? What is that going to help with? And if you know to know this question, you need to know the answer to what valves do in a circulatory system. So what's the important role for semilunar valve? Exactly. It's to help the direction of flow. So it's going to help backflow of your fluids. Okay. Now, if you have a compromised valve system in your lymphatics, that could also cause edema. It could edema as well because you're gonna have buildup instead in your lymphatic system, and it's not, in the fluids that aren't going to travel properly. Now, that's important. Okay, there's another thing you need to know. All right, so no this statement, very important statement. Now, the pumping of our heart has little to no influence on the movement of lymph. So, I have a question, guys. How do you think it's possible for the lymph to travel through our lymphatic system? What's propelling it? That the direction of fluid. So we have the semilunar valves that are going to prevent backflow. What actually causes the flow to happen? What do you think the flow if the pumping of the heart has little to no influence? I just want to see you guys if anyone can get on that one. Does anyone have an idea why, like how does lymph travel if knowing pumping of our heart has little to no influence? I wouldn't say that. It's pretty cool, and actually, something it's simple. It's too simple to be true. It's that kind of thing. So contraction of skeletal muscles, like if you're taking a walk, movement, skeletal muscle contraction, smooth muscle contractions, these actually all contract and actually put. I mean, you're partially correct. It's not. It presses down on the lymphatic system. So yes, in a sense, there is a pressure gradient, I suppose, but it's really caused by various muscle contractions throughout your entire body. That's going to squeeze the lymphatic vessels to squeeze it, and it's going to push up the fluid. Make sense? Yes, Carolina. That's exactly why. Putting one and two together, like yes, yep. So it's going to be primarily your contraction. So actually, the pressure being pressed onto the your variables. All right. So I think to now I'm going to stop here because I think someone wants to talk with me. Um, Tomorrow This chapter is gonna be really short, guys. That's why I'm doing this, right? I'm doing it like this because it's not a long chapter, not a ton of detail, and I'm actually providing a lot of detail for everyone anyways. So whenever if you miss anything, it's already there to be read. The important things. Tomorrow I'm gonna go over the exam. Everyone would like that, I hope, right? Everyone like me to go over the exam tomorrow together. What's going on there? And if you don't freak out, if you, I know some people message me already, they want to talk to me. Don't freak out, all right? It's not like the final grade give you on the exam necessarily, right? Um, I made it potentially a little bit more difficult because I want you guys to think more. It's not to penalize you, all right? Notice you guys a few more medical questions, right? Uh, you know, was I wanted to do that just to think a little bit. Don't worry if you you know like a D plus maybe or low C on it. Uh, it's not that's not final grade for that. Okay, guys. So I'll see you tomorrow. All right.